George Robertson, how are you, buddy? It's great to see you. It's been a while. How's your trading career going?
Um, I've had perhaps the most raucous experience of the last couple of months that I've had in 50 years.
Okay.
And I think maybe I'll throw it out to people so that perhaps it's useful for them. I got as high as up 40% year to date about 4 weeks ago, and I'm now down 17% year to date. Now, the qualifier on that is that when Trump started to sign all those executive orders, I just got the hell out of the market, period. Went to
I
cash.
remember. Yeah.
Yep.
So you
And
missed that whole uh, drawdown into April. You were out. You got out
yeah,
before that
I was
debacle.
out, made a little bit in Canada, US,
Yeah.
in the process, but just small change. But the whole thing of it was that the whole market, from my read, and not to get too highfalutin theoretical, but the whole market is based upon a rule of law, or the ability of contracts to be honored, and having some sort of ability to forward plan what the heck's going to happen with some dependency on future value. And Trump has deliberately attacked that, and he doesn't make any secret of it. He's now has got 333 cases, all of which will probably end up in the Supreme Court. It's one of the biggest hairball clogs in the shower drain that the U.S. has ever experienced legally. And they're all directed to augmenting the executive power at the expense of the Supreme Court's constitutional power. Now, this sounds like maybe great for first-year university discussions, but it's really very sincere. And I think it explains all the movement we've had in stocks since Trump 2 started. We drew down because of assumptions, which I think, ironically, are now starting to bear out to be true about the impact from a macro point of view of the tariffs.
Yes.
And then we recovered, I think, because it started to become clear that a lot of this was bombast, hype, Trump's secret sauce, or not so secret sauce, mud in your eye type stuff. And so people started to be lackadaisical in terms of the seriousness of the situation, and we went up from the
Well,
5,000.
not Wall
Mhm.
Street though, George. They were leaning on him to do something, delay it, temper it. They were real vocal about the reciprocal tariffs. What's his name? His trade guy, Navarro, was taking huge heat. They came out, they had to say, oh, the market will recover, which they were right. And for the market to turn around, um, after a tweet that it might be a good time to buy stocks, DJT, that was the day, is something I haven't seen in my lifetime,
It was
let alone a
absolutely
president
extraordinary.
representing a asset class like crypto.
Yeah, it sort of it made Nancy Pelosi look like a piker in terms of her inside trading, or advantage trading, I guess would be a better way. I know that if she was inside trading, she would have been put to jail. But it's not clear who the hell prospered from the tweet coming out and then the S&P going on a tear upwards. Uh, it's bizarre. I think it's just bizarre, and his chutzpah is just amazing, good for bad. And he says, well, if you think this has ethical or legal problems, well, why don't I do 10 times more or 100 times more? And at the same time, every single one of these cases that are now in lower federal district courts or in federal district courts appeals, or occasionally going up to the Supreme Court for stay of lower courts actions. Every single one of these is still live. It's like you got the 220-volt wire dancing around on the road, and everyone's now just driving by it blithely. It's business as usual. So not to get into like whether MAGA is good, bad, or politics or all that stuff, just from a the essential underpinnings to the market, which which is so ubiquitous that we've just taken for granted. They're on the table. We have no idea where the hell this law is going to break, and if the law goes to the Supreme Court, we're getting every sign. My read, and this is a trading read, but this is the trade, probably the trade of the century. Is the Supreme Court Federalists, and they're going to shut this guy down, or are they going to like say, hey, you know, thank God Trump arrived, and we're going to give up 200 years of precedents and constitutional definition that we've developed ever since you know, since Marshall. And here, Trump, you're in charge, totally. I think
Yeah.
the Supreme Court is going to be pretty vicious and adamant. And the reason it's going slow right now is that they want to make sure every I's dotted, every T's crossed. So there's absolutely no room for when they start to rule against Trump.
So you think they're going to lean federalists and
Oh, I
protect
think
the rule of law?
right, and I think Trump conveniently sort of shows what's his biggest concern was like what was it, a month ago or so. He was complaining about how these Federalist Society guys betrayed him by getting him to appoint Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, even Gorsuch, who actually think the Constitution is pretty important. And he's shut up about that. I think he does have some sort of input in terms of his wild ass tweeting and declarations, because he did shut up about going mano a mano against the Supreme Court. But they're still alive. They're still ongoing, and I think it's a mistake to assume that because the Supreme Court is insisting on percolation, they call it. That I got that from Coney Barrett, not my own reading. That when it does arrive on their deck, it's going to be absolutely impervious to whatever they decide on. And I think they're Federalists. I think they're going to go, and it's going to be for the what's called the 25-26 session, which starts in terms of hearing arguments in fall of this year. And it goes right into the first quarter of
Midterms?
next year.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah,
You know, I want to give this some context because
yeah.
you and I have been talking for a few years at least, right,
Hmm.
George? 2, 3
Hmm.
years. And George was, a bull all the way through. Higher interest rates didn't bother George for his calls for a much higher market. He said that was part of the process. He was right for years, even though there were small corrections. And he stood by his guns, stayed in the market, even when we had that carry trade unwind that we came back from quite quickly, and then changed his view when he saw some of these things happening that we were going to have a constitutional crisis here. And that was
Hmm.
one of the reasons why you got flat the market. I think you've been probing shorts in the market as well. So, you haven't been a perma bear in the market, that this is really a development maybe over the last 5, 6 months for you.
Yeah, it's historical. That's a neat word to hide behind. Nobody can blame you anything happens week to week, but it definitely is epic. And because it doesn't seem to manifest itself today versus tomorrow or last week, it doesn't mean you can ignore it. I think it's the underpinning for everything that's going to happen for the next couple of years. Uh, and so therefore what I did is like, Trump started to lean against human spirits, animal spirits are still in force. So we went pretty fairly long with good timing in right, actually not bad, pretty well to the lows, and that brought me up to the 40% year to date, going about 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And Dale, I think I'm in probably I'd probably fire myself if I worked for myself like 10 years ago. But I think this is a once in a career opportunity, and I am short, and I'm going to do it in tranches. I've already spent a third of all the money I can afford to lose in S&P puts. I'm seeking the highest convexity I can, so that means I'm doing out of the money short dated puts. So I'm going to roll it. I know I'm in the meat processing
Minority.
plant
Yeah.
of the guys like Citadel and all who are just having a happy day with my small ad to their profit. But I think one day soon, or let's say within the year, one of these three tranches is going to hit and result in the 10 times, 20 times earnings. Now, having said that, I'm going to equivocate is that the chunk of money that I require to live on for the next 20 years, assuming I live for another 20 years, is in cash. And haven't messed with it. And so all you're going to do is see me sort of disappear into the dusk. You're not going to, you don't have to worry about me. But as far as making money and outsized gains, I think this is just one of the most spectacular opportunities. It's all the Constitution. Nobody's watching it. Everyone takes it for granted that whatever the hell this guy says on his tweets and Truth Social, and I'm not debating. He has a seed of truth to everything he says from my point of view. I'm a Republican. What the hell?
Okay.
But where he goes with it is just like, I think the guy's on acid.
Okay.
It just
Anyway,
takes
I
off.
think I don't know what he takes, but I think his
Yeah. Well, hey,
niece
actually,
is
that's the
saying,
best way, Dale, is just why bother? But go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think that a correction is underway that started from yesterday. Now, my objectives are not the April lows. I'm looking at this as possibly just being, 5% or so from the highs. You're looking for the big crash to take out the April lows, or can you make
Yeah, but
money? Can you make money
yeah.
on 5% swings
Yeah,
in your
5%. I'm
options?
happy, and I might
Yeah.
forget everything I said to you now with 5%, and
Okay.
I'll just crow.
Oh,
But
all right.
I think we're in a very just a fascinating time, and I I don't want to be snarky, but to talk about flags and triple tops and everything like this is
Yeah.
sort of like trying to do technical analysis in the midst of D-Day. You could be right week to week, but I don't think that's going to be the story. And of course, I'm one of many. I could be out to lunch. That's the view I have.
Do you think the bigger stories in the Treasury market, George? There was a little action
Yeah,
in the repo market where I know you know about this stuff. I think a few weeks ago,
yeah.
some of the banks had to go to the Fed window, which has a negative stigma and a higher price tag, to borrow, and it was a fairly large amount that people were comparing it to what was happening in 2018. Um, so the bonds and what's happening in the plumbing. What do you think?
I think that there's way more made of repo, and I jokingly call it swinging the alphabet after the Three Stooges song. A B day of da
Yeah,
da,
yeah,
the pretty gal singing. Um, the U.S. As a credit is not going to be an issue in all of this. Certainly, my lifetime might be in your lifetime, but that's because you're going to be around for another 50 years. But it's not going to be it has no bearing on anything. So
okay.
whether repo goes up to like 2 trillion or drops down to 1 billion is nothing. And it's just a matter of flipping a switch and saying, okay, issue a billion, issue a trillion, take it back in. It's no more exciting than a guy depositing his cash for his car wash every day at the bank. There's no story there. Where the story is with treasuries is that treasuries, given the credit quality of the U.S. and its permanence, is pricing the economic fate of the country, our outcome for the next decade, 20 years, not in terms of whether it disappears off the face of the earth like the Bitcoin guys talk about, or whether it's going to like go into a happy AI days. It's just going to be there. So whether it's going to be 4% growth for the next 10 years or 6% growth for the next 10 years, as those expectations form, and right now it's very difficult to have any expectations given the current administration, that's where the U.S. Treasury 10-year will be. And then the U.S. Treasury 10-year back to like Fed funds and 3-month bills or whatever is just a logical, actually a mathematical algo to decide, well, if 10 years are here, this is where 3-month T-bills will be. If 10 years are there, that's where they'll change to. A big problem of late, well, it's not a problem, it's just a situation, is the Fed has basically left monetary policy. It used to be, they used to go out of their way to be as simple as hell, a Taylor rule or any sort of rule that if, like you're talking today, like PPI was soft. Well, what the hell does that mean these days to the Fed? It means nothing. What it means is that they might change their view on what they say about like 2 basis points over the next 6 months. But as far as like, okay, PPI comes out here, therefore Fed funds, as soon as we can, is going to rise 50 basis points, or it's going to drop 50 basis points, and you can hang your hat on it, and which is what we all did for decades and decades, made a good living on. Those days are over. They're far more concerned about the stress test for JP Morgan and, still handling the Silicon Valley bank fallout and making sure all the banks and all this monetary talk is basically the Fed placating or pandering to Congress, first because it's the law, they have to, but it's really, as far as the markets go and input in terms of what the Treasury 10-year is going to do or what have you, the Fed's a non-issue now. It's almost a mirror reflecting the emotional thoughts currently of the marketplace sentiment. It has nothing to do with macroeconomics.
Okay, you have a view on the dollar, George? Does that matter?
I think that the dollar right now is trading in response to like how powerful is China going to be, how powerful Europe's going to be in terms of countering Trump, and are getting what they want. They've had a great ride, and I think from a national security point of view, maybe it's not a bad idea to let China flood the market with cheap dinner plates for Walgreens or Walmart. Because it keeps us from having to put like 2 aircraft carrier task force in the Taiwan area.
Right.
But China's keen to keep that going, not so much for us or how much money guys are going to make, but just for placating and keeping domestic stability in the Chinese market, which still has a big chunk of it based on exports. So what that comes down to currency is that China's, I don't think they have any choice. I think they're going to be hell-bent to maintain like a 7 yuan to the dollar just to keep this mercantilistic trade flows. And the euro, I think they would like to see it go back down to like 1 or something like that, or 110.
Okay.
But for now, it's going up, and it's just like, what's your view on the political capabilities of Europe and China and now Canada, who is a really overlooked, powerful player vis-a-vis Trump's trade tariff policy, if not the kingmaker.
Why?
Well,
why does Canada have that much power?
I think it's still the largest, if not the second largest trade partner of the United States. Now, that was all fine and good if they minded their P's and Q's and acted like a good province of the United States hegemony, which they're quite happy to do, and everyone was quite happy to do, and they didn't have to get like 50 ballistic missiles or anything like that ready for war. So everything was fat and happy. But Trump, for whatever reason, decided that no, we don't want to quiet Canada. We want Canada to fully explore all their capabilities and power, which is something nobody. Why do it? I mean, you got this nice toy poodle in the living room. Why do you want to train it to attack you? So Canada, by how it might interact with Europe, and it can. Trump taught us how to do that by saying that we're going to take on Greenland. So likely Canada never thought of joining the euro, but now it's on the table. And given that
Hmm.
they are the largest single trade partner, I think partner is the wrong word these days, but interactive trade dealer with the U.S., they have great suasion. Canada can make or break Detroit, for example, or Canada can make or break the whole Midwest in terms of potash and
Okay,
fertilizer
fertilizer. Yeah,
exports. Yeah.
yeah.
So why Trump wanted to educate Canada in terms of what their actual power is beyond me, but he did.
They
And
fought side by side with us in every war.
yeah, they're quite happy.
They're
We don't think
friends.
they were happy about it, but they're quite.
Maybe you saw that John Candy movie where they went to war with Canada. You think that could be
I think
George?
I think that movie is a brilliant movie for macroeconomic instruction these days. And John Candy was completely in charge with the garbage truck
Yeah.
with obscenities on it until the Royal Canadian Mounted Police pulled him over and said, "No, we need that in bilingual. So you gotta change the shit to murd and that stuff." And
So let me ask you, with this happening and your view on the market, does that include, the market and the economy are two different things, aren't they?
I think actually for the first time the discount that I perceived in hindsight I can say I did it right between the actual value of the economy in terms of what it should do to asset prices and how people were perceiving it has closed. I don't think there's a discount now.
Okay.
Given corporate profits and some of the other things, I have some charts to show,
So
but we can probably just do a better job talking about it. I think it's now fairly valued. So if Trump had just shut up and had maintained some sort of semblance of the Biden fiscal flows, maybe doing things like not letting 6'8" men compete in women's swimming
yeah,
swimming
right.
competitions, and there's all sorts of things he could have done, which maybe should have been done. Uh, he would go down as like Reagan times 20. Like he had the setting, and he still does to some degree, of being the most prosperous presidency in many, many decades. But no, he had to perceive that there's this mega, anyway, blah, blah, blah. They were going down the political avenue. So by doing that, there is, and with the fact that I think that the realization of asset prices are now in a sync with the great massive prosperity of the United States that's been ongoing for a decade and then sort of put on steroids by Biden. It means that we're very vulnerable to any sort of really political commotion of substance, and I think Trump has gone out of his way to give it to us. I don't know, maybe this guy prevails and he ends up having a royal presidency here on for the next century. I don't think so. But that will become the big issue. And then if a 10 to 20% discounting, which is the norm of asset prices to the economic reality,
Where
reappears,
would where would that put the S&P? What's your long-term
I think
objective?
of course, we need a commotion to go alongside it, some sort of big crisis. But I think 4,000, 4,500. I think we
Okay.
saw it in 2022,
Okay.
and a risk discounting of some sort.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that doesn't take the wind out of the AI sales or whatever. And we got to get rid of, we do have to get rid of some fluff that's going on. And what I mean by fluff is like Bitcoin, crypto. Think of all these things, not in terms of whether Bitcoin's right, Bitcoin's wrong, but just think of it as a distraction to try to figure out what Microsoft's asset value is versus the economy. And we've had so many distractions, which used to just be fun things to mess with, which have become the main act. Like Nvidia is going to like take over the world, and yes, okay, I get the spiel, I get blockchain, I get all that stuff, but they're distractions for the main the main issues that are always with us and will continue to be with us. So I think the
Stable
distractions
coins,
go away.
stable
Pardon?
coin, stable
Stable
coins
coin,
too.
like
Yeah.
I almost joined the Trump camp. Like, geez, I sure as hell do not want AI married with the Federal Reserve to be able to track every cent that I do in my life here on, in terms of where I live, what I'm doing, and what I plan to do. I'd like to be able to like edge my tax bill by $100 a year at least. But that game's going to be over. And then not only that, they're going to be able
Turn you off.
to track everybody. I don't think stablecoin's a good idea. I
Yeah,
think the
that'll lead to social credit scores like we have in China.
it's going to lead to China.
Okay.
I think the U.S. has again, it goes back to this Constitution and everything, but I think the capability ends up defining the setting rather than the other way around. If the U.S. government and the ends up with perfect knowledge of you personally at a micro, minute level, and it doesn't really need to look at things in terms of meta or broad based, but just like to the point. That will create the form of government, I think, rather than the other way around. It's not like we have all sorts of trouble that the government. Anyway, that's that's where my I take off about stablecoin. But I think all these distractions have to be removed, at least for a period, so we get back to journeyman macroeconomics and portfolio management and stuff. Like for example, you mentioned treasuries. The big problem treasuries have is that the correlation that shows up as covariance in a large portfolio between risk-free treasuries, say the 10-year, to equity, which allows MetLife and Mutual of Omaha, I think they're still in existence. Are they still out hunting lions? But MetLife, New York Life, Northwest, the only way they can function is that there's a reasonable outlook for how U.S. Treasuries will behave versus equity, as this, perhaps it's overplayed at times, but it's the insurance to equity. Well, that's not there anymore. They're actually they actually have a positive correlation of late. Treasuries rally, equity rallies. Interest rates going down is good for equity. It's just it prevents craft from being expressed in terms of very large risk issues that are essential to the United States being a capitalist effort to being run. So rather than say, well, the doom's going to come and I'm going to go get some Bitcoin, I think what you should do is saying, well, the U.S. is pretty big. There's a lot of people that have, they know which side the bread's buttered on. So what's going to change to these assets' behavior to return to a normal
Valuations?
Yeah. And I think that, treasuries definitely, 10-year treasuries could go to 6%, which is a good sign in terms of this, what I just mentioned. Our equity could get shed of this pillaging of the zero trade date to expiry guys. And you mentioned the move and all these vol players of incredible size, who are basically able to define volatility for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They should be gone so that we can move the risk back to being the source of return for investments over the long run. Anyway, I don't think anyone's going to get me Treasury Secretary anytime soon. So
I was thinking more like Fed Chairman.
I don't think I want that job now.
Yeah, it's a tough gig. So and in a tough room. So George Robertson, why don't you wrap it with how you think things are going to play out into the fall?
Well, I've gotten, as I said, I think it's very, very important to really be risk adverse in terms of that chunk of wealth, money, assets that you got to have. You just can't. This is now's not the day to leverage up and go buy the F-150 pickup truck. with all the increments. You should figure out what money you need for the next 20, 30 years in a tough time, and then set that aside. I think cash right now. And then if you're fortunate, and I'm somewhat fortunate, you got a bunch of money that if you lose all of it, you're humiliated, you're embarrassed, my risk manager gets really on my back. We have to go on a camping trip to Canada versus
Mrs. Robertson's your risk
the risk
manager, right?
manager. Let's
Okay.
please treat the risk manager with appropriate respect.
Yeah.
So I take that money with respect, and I've divided it into 3 tranches, and I've already spent a third of it. And I think within 6-9 months, I'm getting one of those tranches will kick, and I'll have like a 20 times return to the risk I put in, which would be more than adequate for. Now, if all I say is full of it, and Trump is actually just a terrific administrator, and I'm just out to lunch about this Constitution. The Supreme Court is going to I don't know what they're going to do, but Trump's right. He's right. MAGA, the U.S. was in dire crisis before he got elected. And okay, I'll shut up. But if that happens, then I just blow away. I just have to clip my coupons, and maybe I'll keep writing up the monetary frontier with the idea that somebody will pay me $10 a month for I'm sorry for the next 2 years, but that's about it.
Okay, George. Completely gut level transparency about what you're doing. I respect it, and also your ideas, and is it a Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times. So here we are.
Yeah, and the other side of that, Dale, is I may be transparent and humble and a nice guy now, but by God, if I'm right, I'll be king of the world. You won't hear the land. I'll be. You should probably send people out to try to shut me up now, because if I am right,
are you kidding? If you're right, you're gonna have to fly out to San Diego, California, for us to have a beer together, George. How about that?
Yeah, and I'll at that point I'll even pay for it, Dale.
George Robertson, everybody,
Okay,
guy who talks.
Dale. Obvious, always a huge compliment that you have me on. I really appreciate it. The last couple of weeks, I'm not getting many invites, so I appreciate the risk taking you're doing by putting me on here.
Well, I'm a fan, George, and
Okay.
you're always welcome here on Face. And
Okay.
I'll be sending you a DM, and we'll be talking in the fall.
Okay. Look forward to it, Dale, and I hope you have a great year.
Thank you, everyone. At the minimum, follow George on X at Bicker.
On X, I'm at Bickering Brattle. That's Wee Mousy from Burns, if anybody wants to get into it. And I run a Substack. It's the cheapest Substack going that I'm aware of, considering what I think is some input. The Monetary Frontier.
There it is. So it's right under his handle, and you can go for 10 a month, 8.33 a month. And there are some ideas, and be great to have a watchman like George that you could read as we proceed through the drama. The drama.
Quickly, I apologize. I haven't done anything for 3 weeks now. I'm just off COVID. I know it's like my 4th COVID, but boy, this was a tough one. It was brewed in Romania. Went out there to visit family. Guys with the U.S. Army, and I came back and I was just strapped. Wow. Just coming out. So that's my excuse as to why there hasn't been much in the monetary frontier. I think you can see I'm starting to feel a little more chipper, so there'll be a lot more product on it.
All right, George. Health to you, and Godspeed with whatever you're trying to accomplish, in my view. And really,
as soon as you figure that out, tell me, will you, Dale?
You'll hear from me. I'm not shy. So thank you, George.
Okay.
So all right. So that's a wrap, and everyone, you could Join the team in 8 minutes on the morning edge. And don't forget, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. See everyone tomorrow. You're welcome, Laura. Adios, everyone.
Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with ForexAnalytix. Thanks for stopping by our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like these videos, share them, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of the content that we provide here for free. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next video.